Hey everybody, here's the Challenger game I promised in the last video. Once again we've ended up on Melanovka, although this time we have actually ended up in a proper match. Well, I use the term proper match sparingly because we have five E25s on our team and 4 on the enemy team. So it's not really normal matchmaking, but we'll have to make do with what we got. One thing I'd like to point out at the start of this match, actually, before I say anything else, is that I do have the new enhanced minimap features turned on. Now, although these do feature some of the same things that the XVM minimap tool does, it's not quite as featured. It does have your frontal arc indicated on the map. It has your guns facing indicated by that dashed yellow line, as you can see. Oh, sorry, that's the cameras facing, not the guns. That's interesting. So yeah, it doesn't show the facing of your hull or your gun, it shows the facing of the camera, which is of questionable use. It also doesn't show view distance or render distance. So of course on the XVM minimap you have the visual rendering of the maximum spotting distance of your tank, which changes up or down based on what equipment you have equipped, and you know whether your binoculars are actually active or not, and if your crew members get hit or not. This doesn't have any of that. It also doesn't have the render box, so you can't really easily tell where your render distance stops, unless obviously there's a tank you can see on the map that you can't see on your screen, then you know that it's outside of it. Anyway, taking up pretty standard TD position, trying to get shots up the ramp. Managed to get a sneaky shot on the side of that T-34 one going up the hill, possibly a second one. I think I only got one into him, but I'm not sure. It was difficult to tell. Interestingly enough, with the high ping and packet loss I get to test, a lot of the time it looks on my screen as though a shell has completely missed a tank, and yet it will register a hit, which is interesting. Obviously the game runs server side, so you know whether my client thinks it's hit or not is neither here nor there, but it makes it very difficult to actually adjust my aim, especially on a moving target. So here I'm just looking for cheap shots I can get at the enemy tanks, basically. The Black Prince is coming up. It's an armoured target, but it's a slow one. Unfortunately, he had me distracted, so I couldn't get an easy shot into the M445, who will spend the rest of the game taunting me. Probably not deliberately even. Able to get one shot in before I get a 0 damage track, but then my shells start finding their weak spots again, and the Black Prince gets taken down. You can definitely hear in this tank the new turret sounds that Wargaming have been working on, and contrary to what I thought when they first introduced them, there is actually a hand traverse sound. It's just very quiet, so typically you can't hear it over the engine. I apologise for the slow game. It started out painfully slowly with me mostly just sitting here trying to find shots on this AMX M4 who didn't want to give me any. In fact, I'm just going to hit the time acceleration because really nothing happens for a good several minutes here. I don't know what the AMX was doing. I wanted him to just drive forwards another 3 feet and that's all it would have needed. But apparently he was scared of our tanks on the hill, and so he wouldn't push up. Finally, I decide if he's not going to push, then I may as well. So I start moving up, and here you can see the good mobility of the Challenger in use. Now, an interesting point about this tank is I actually did some comparing of the two turrets, because it turns out you don't need the upgraded turret to mount the top gun. The stock turret has better armour by about double on its frontal facing, but is also slightly taller, traverses a little slower, and has a bit less view range. Honestly, given the role of this tank, turret armour isn't very relevant, so there's probably not much point in choosing to continue using the stock turret over the upgraded turret, but I'm sure it is something that at least some people will end up doing. The game hasn't really had a viable turret choice since the 3601 was converted to a heavy tank and its stock turret was made considerably worse than its upgraded turret. Two of the enemy TDs have put the flank on our team down here and are actually rolling up behind us, having decided not to cap out, which is just fine by me. Instead of staying up on the hill, I decide to shift down into the forest and help RE25 out by flanking them, pretending I am a real Cromwell, not a bastardized Cromwell with a giant box head turret. I'm still not entirely sure what is up with the design of this turret. I think that the hexagonal box on top of it is actually some kind of very large vent. It appears to be louvered on the sides. Maybe somebody who knows more about this vehicle could confirm that. I'm pretty sure the thing on the back of the turret's a counterweight though. Much like the T-34, it has very thick rear armor on the turret, comparatively speaking, because it needs something to counterweight the gun. So make a quick shot, take out the Hellcat, who is the bigger threat, and the E-25 goes down in short order. Of course, if they'd had more hit points, that would have been a mistake, but because I'm still full health and they were not, I was able to slip in there and 1-2 punch them out of the game pretty quickly. And I should point out, all these new British TDs do have quite good view range. Not quite as insanely good as some TDs, but certainly not bad, and so I've thrown binoculars on just to allow me to spot my own targets and to help out with late game situations like this, where the enemy have two extremely strong tank destroyers basically sitting at the edge of our render distance in the open, where we're forced to cross a killing ground to come to them. Now, while this tank does have the speed to shift around quickly, and its turning radius isn't that bad, considering the amount of weight stuck on top of it, it's certainly not the kind of thing you want to be pretending it's a medium tank in. It's just a large target, it has no survivability when it's caught in the open, and the turret traverse is quite slow, so it's kind of similar to the Hellcat in that while it is fast and it is relatively agile, and it does have quite a decent gun that fires relatively quickly, plus it's got a 360-degree traversing turret, it's not something you want to be using as a medium tank. It just does not have the capability that a medium tank does. If you want to get up in people's faces and circle them, use a Cromwell or a Comet. Although even in those, quite often getting up in people's faces is a mistake. So I'm going to just hit the time acceleration again here, as I was slowly shifting about trying to spot the AT-15 with my binocs. The email gets lit. I'm able to quickly snap a shot off into the front of him, which lit on fire, and the A-25 finishes him. The AT-15 could reasonably only have dived into the trench to the right of where I'm aiming, where the Arty normally hides, or he could have maybe moved to the south along the 1 line. So I stay behind the hills as much as possible, try and use the trees as camouflage to mask my approach, and then make sure when I do pop up it's going to be behind a hill. This thing actually does have quite good gun depression, which you should not get used to because the other tank destroyers in this line do not. You can't really see it in use here, but it does have rather good depression. If I was on a steeper hill, you'd be able to tell. Of course, as you saw in my other videos, the Charioteer, the Conway, and the 4005 have absolutely dick all gun depression and want to stay away from hills as much as possible. Anyway, so this thing's now relevant, given the, not final, but the current stats of the Firefly. So, my verdict on this has changed. I now could see this being quite a decent tank destroyer. I don't know if it would really be a keeper. It's not that bad though. And, you know, for a tier 7, it could be interesting. It does have quite a decent gun. It fires relatively quickly. It's pretty mobile, so you know, I could see it working. I'm just not sure it's going to have the staying power of the Archer, the Charioteer, or the 4005. And as I've said in my other videos, I think those are the three real keepers from this line. Anyway, it's ended up being not a huge match, but I think it was a fairly decent demonstration of this thing's capabilities now. And if I do get a better match in it, I will of course try and post it up. But failing that, I think this pretty much covers everything. I didn't really get shot the gun depression as much as I'd like, but if you just take my word for it, it is quite decent. It's certainly leaps and bounds better than the following TDs. So this is sort of a decent all-rounder, I think. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and hopefully I'll be able to get some more stuff out from 9.5 test, but as I said, we'll see how we go. And then I've got to try and catch up to my normal backlog. Of course, I can't stop myself, and so now I've put myself in a situation again where I'm about 2 patches behind. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the field. See you on the next one.